So hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And I hope you're all enjoying the expansion. I'm super loving this expansion, most parts of it. Loving the mounts, loving running around the desert. And in that respect, I have a build for you. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's build time! I've been super excited to get out there, test these new elite specializations, and I have found something that I find tremendously fun. So let's get straight into it. So let's go through where this build is useful. It's very, very useful in the open world. It's where I designed this build primarily to be. It's super fun. It makes you basically invulnerable while putting out fairly decent damage numbers, and I can't describe to you how much fun this is running around the desert using this build. Secondly, fractals. Potentially useful in fractals. It's not going to be optimal. This build isn't designed around DPS. It's more designed around gameplay, and that becomes less of a thing in fractals. Thirdly, raids. Obviously, as I said, it's not based around DPS. This is not a build I would recommend using in raids, because it just doesn't put out the optimal DPS that a Mirage can put out. However, with a few tweaks, it actually can be pretty close. So I guess I'll leave it to your discretion, but I wouldn't personally. And finally, PvP. So I had a long discussion with a friend of mine who plays PvP about how this build, even though it's slightly different, because one or two of the abilities / the gear is a little bit different in PvP, it works super well in PvP. So if you're interested in PvP, this build might be for you as well. So let's get into the skills. For the skills, we're using a lot of the new Mirage stuff. So the Mirage Heal, False Oasis, creates a Mirage at your current location and heal over time. When the Mirage expires, it spawns a Mirage Mirror. So this whole build is going to be based around Mirage Mirrors. So having this, this Mirage doesn't really do much, and then this mirror is what we're interested in. And then we have mirror images. So this is just a nice, fast way to generate clones in the open world. It's going to be about clones, this build, so having mirror images is quite good. You could pick all sorts of things here if you want decoy, maybe. I would recommend some sort of clone generating skill. And then we have sand through glass. Evade backwards and leave behind a Mirage mirror. As I said, this whole build is about creating Mirage mirrors. So this skill ports you back a bit. And leaves the Mirage mirror, so then you can walk into it. But more importantly, I'll go straight to the elite here. Deception, Jaunt. Shadow step to your target location and confuse nearby foes. So the combination of these two things is an instant bit of damage and a Mirage mirror. And I'll show you just in a sec the combination there. So you press your second utility and then your elite, and you just pop straight back into it, and you don't lose any damage time, and you just gain a Mirage mirror. And then we have Signet of Midnight, improved condition duration. So this is a condition-based build, so having this Condi duration here is very, very strong. 20% is ridiculous from one Signet. So let's get into the specializations. So for the specializations, we have Illusions, Dueling, and Mirage, obviously. And we're going to be focusing heavily on clones and their damage, instead of Phantasms, which normal Mesmers do. So what do we have here? We have the Pledge. Reduce recharge on torch skills. We're running a torch, so a bit more burning from your torch. Great. Shatter skills, inflict torment on hit. So this is kind of kind of useful in the open world. You'll be shattering a lot because things will die, and you won't always have access to this number 3 skill, which allows you to switch clones between targets. So shattering can be very useful, and inflicting torment on shatter can be very good. And I'll draw attention to this minor trait here, Master of Misdirection. Confusing you inflict lasts longer. Shatter skills gain recharge reduction. Not so much about the recharge reduction on the shatter skills, but the confusion that you gain lasts 33% longer. This maxes out the duration of confusion, and you will be playing a lot of confusion with this build. So, and then your shatter skills are improved. Master of Fragmentation. This is just to make the open world gameplay a bit more fluid, a bit more fun. Like the fact that diversion strikes up to 5 targets is the thing that I really look at there. Because if you're wanting to daze, or use this skill to get that torment and confusion out, you're going to be wanting to hit multiple targets as much as possible. So the others already do. 5 targets, 5 targets. So having that do 5 targets as well, dazing a group of mobs, that's quite nice. So moving on to dueling, we have Desperate Decoy, cloak and leave a clone of yourself behind if you take damage behind below the health threshold. And anyway, generating cloaks is nice. There's a variation that will need this, which I'll talk about a bit later. But that's basically if you want to make this build a little bit closer to what the actual meta Mirage build is, using pistol phantasms. That's what you might swap to if you were doing this in fractals or something like that. But for the meantime, Desperate Decoy. And then Evasive Mirror. This is a build around evasion, and this is pretty silly. So you gain 2 seconds of reflecting projectiles when you evade an attack. You're going to be evading attacks constantly with this build. So it basically means you have Evasive Mirror up all the time. So you're constantly reflecting projectiles, which is super strong. This is like, it's ridiculous. I don't know if you've been wandering around the desert or whatever, but these sharpshooters are all over the place. These forged sharpshooters, they do quite a lot of damage. Well, now they do quite a lot of damage to themselves. So yeah. There's that. And then we have Deceptive Evasion. Create a clone at your current position when you dodge. So I haven't gone into the gameplay of this yet, but we will be dodging a lot. So creating a clone when you dodge is very useful in terms of, just keeping your clone count high. So Mirage, and this is where the magic happens or whatever. So when entering combat, Riddle of Sound, when entering combat, your first ambush attack applies confusion. This ability refreshes when you use a shatter skill. So you don't have to run this. This is just a little bit of extra confusion at the start of a fight. You could run this. Using a deception skill will create a clone if you have any illusions active. So this is a nice thing to keep up your levels of clones as well, particularly if you get into the spirit of it and you're shattering a lot. This is a deception, this is a deception, and this is a deception. So you can use these, just make sure that you have an illusion when you do it. So if you're planning on regenerating clones, after you shatter, then you have to create a clone first, and then you can use deception skills to fill up the rest of your bar. This thing is worth mentioning, Nomad's Endurance. Shatter skills give Vigor, and Vigor grants condition damage. So using shatters will give you vigor, and vigor is important to this build, and you'll see why a bit later on. Then we have Mirrored Axes. Reduce the recharge of axe skills. Axes generate additional phantasmal axes. So this is, you're using an axe primarily in this. You can use a scepter for a ranged option and get pretty much the same result as an axe. An axe is just a little bit better, so like being a melee, being a bit better, that makes sense to me. But if you wanted to have a range option, you could swap this out for either of these 2 others. Mirage Mantle, gain protection when a Mirage Cloak ends. That's pretty silly as well. As I said, we're generating a lot of Mirage Cloaks here. So, you can use you can use that, or you can use this illusion shattered by distortion. So this one would generate extra mirage mirrors. As I said, mirage mirror equals good, therefore this is a very nice trait as well. But I found that this generated a lot of extra damage and it was difficult to drop. And then Infinite Horizon, when you gain Mirage Cloak, your illusions also gain it. So this is a very important trait for this build. The clones you have will get access to the ambush skill. If I hover over this thing here, the ambush skill, reveal phantasmal axes that seek out the nearest target after a short delay. So it's 8 seconds of confusion there, right? This will apply to all of your clones. So every time you get a Mirage Mirror, they will get access to this ambush skill. And they will do this confusion. And the confusion of this will go through the roof because of this. You get 3 clones, and you'll be constantly giving Mirage Mirrors. So that's the specializations. Now, normally I would do the gear first, but we're going to do the gear now. And you'll see when the magic of this build happens. So what gear are we running? It's Vipers. Pretty much all the way we have Vipers gear. I have the Sigil of Malice, and very importantly, the Sigil of Energy. So gain 50% of your endurance when you swap to this weapon in combat. So this means essentially when you're in combat and you change weapons, you will gain 50% of your endurance bar here. Why is this important? Well, we're going to be constantly dodging, creating Mirage Mirrors. So keeping our endurance up is really important. And I have a setup here where I have an axe on the main hand and a torch on the offhand. And this does create 2 weapon sets. It doesn't look like it's 2 weapon sets because it's only literally 2 weapons, one in the main, one in the offhand. But this combination does create a weapon swap, which procs this sigil, the 50%. So when you run out of endurance, you change weapons and you get 50% of your endurance back, which is precisely 1 dodge, which is very nice. And then here's the interesting bit. We have the Rune of the Adventurer. When you use a heal skill, you also gain 50% endurance. So we have a way to gain a dodge here, and we have a way to gain a dodge here. And what this means is you can dodge, use your ambush skill, dodge, use your ambush skill, switch weapons, dodge, use your ambush skill, dodge, use your ambush skill, press heal, dodge, use your ambush skill, and then use sand through glass and jaunt for another evade, and then the actual evade from this will be up. By that point, your weapon swap will be back. You swap weapons, you gain another dodge. And I think you get the idea of how this all comes together at this point. You're just constantly in a Mirage Mirror, which means you and your clones constantly have access to this ambush skill, Imaginary Axes. And the amount of confusion you can put out is ridiculous. And you put it out while being completely invulnerable to damage. Like, it's insane. It's so, like, I would rarely say this, but this is ridiculously broken for the open world. Obviously, the application of this in high-level play in fractals or raids or whatever is not so important, but for the open world, this is so dumb. You just evade everything, and you do it while actually having damage. It's, yeah, silly. Anyway, so let's get into the sort of basic gameplay to explain, well, to show you exactly how it works. So when you start playing this in the open world, this game style is going to feel quite frantic to begin with, but I promise you stick with it for a couple hours and you'll just become an absolute ninja at using this. And the results are just stupid, honestly. Like, the amount of evasion you have plus the damage you can put out at the same time just means you can almost solo anything, like legitimately solo anything when you get down to it. So what are we going to be doing? We're going to be raising clones up using these 2 abilities. So if I use mirror images and lingering thoughts, I will gain 3 clones. And then I'm just going to start dodging, and occasionally I will use the number 3 skill. This also does an evade as well. So on top of all the other evades you have this evade. You have the ability to turn invisible using the prestige, and this will do damage anyway, so you should just generally press this when you're using the skill. Try not to use your shatters unless you have mirror images back up off of cooldown, and that's just generally how you play it. I mean, you have to sort of play it by feel in the open world, but the general concept is to dodge, change weapons, dodge, heal, dodge. Then I gain my extra Mirage clone, use my F, and now I can change weapons again. And you can see just how much evasion I have in this build. It's actually silly. Then I shattered. I'm dodging again, I'm swapping weapons again, evading, healing, and yeah, I mean you can just see how silly this actually gets. Just the quantity of evasion you actually have, and on top of that, you can even pop distortion as a shatter at some point. So when you distort, you evade all attacks for like 4 seconds, if you're like 3 seconds or whatever, like however many clones you have. It's just silly. I mean, the quantity of stuff you get here is just ridiculous. This in the open world is so much fun. I cannot describe to you like how much fun this is. You can see we're getting reasonable ticks. So I haven't put any buffs on me or any debuffs on the enemy here. This is just like basic baseline damage we're seeing on the golem here. If you're interested in more sort of sustained damage, where you, let me just look at the traits. So there's a trait here: pistol attacks from you and your illusions gain the chance to cause bleeding. So you put that on, and probably this trait as well. And the point is here to use a pistol in the offhand of your second weapon set. So the point would be to put Phantasmal Duelists up the same way that the normal Condi Mesmer does or did before the expansion hit, and you're just rocking a lot of bleeds, and you've just got those 3 phantasms. And the cause of this is that you don't have clones, which means this trait here, Infinite Horizon, is also somewhat useless. But this permanent evade still has a lot of effect because of this trait. Use Sand Shards when you gain Mirage Cloak. Conditions apply to bleeding foes and have increased duration. So you can just generally use this trait anyway, particularly if your gear is optimized around bleeding duration. Using this, getting this every time you dodge, obviously you're dodging a lot, so, well, you know, every time you gain a Mirage Cloak, rather, you gain an extra 2 stacks of bleed for 10 seconds, and this procs a lot as well, so, like, yeah, you'd be wanting to get up as many Phantasmal Duelists as possible, but in the meanwhile, you know, like, axe clones will do a fair amount of damage as well, so... and so will a Torch Phantasm. So gaining the Phantasmal Duelist, because you're not using the Signet, which regenerates Duelists, it's going to be a little bit hard to get them up. But once you have them up, you can play it basically the same as you do a basic Condi Mesmer. I won't go through that because there's lots of builds. There's lots of videos out there of the basic Condi Mesmer stuff, but it should be fairly obvious now how to include these combos into basic Condi Mesmer. So for the consumables, what are we using? Well, anyone who plays any sort of Condi build will know what consumables we're using here. It's Rare Veggie Pizza and Toxic Focusing Crystals. These are, generally speaking, the best food and consumable for any Condi build. You can see how much gear I have in my... I've been testing this class, but yeah, so... it's those two together that just generally work, and some combination of Vipers and Sinister. I've got a couple of Sinister rings here as well. You might find out you get slightly better damage numbers because your confusion caps out at well over 100% here. It depends what variant of the build you're using. If you're using the Phantasms, then you obviously want as much Conti duration as possible. But if you're focusing on the clones, then you might want to put a couple of things of Sinister in. But I'm not going to focus too much on that. So that's about it for the Perma-evade Mirage. I cannot describe to you how fun this build is running in the open world. So I thought I would show you instead. What follows is some bonus footage, 3.5 minutes of me soloing a champion bounty board event. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for watching. Tell a friend. Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day. It's a new life for me, yeah, it's a new dawn, it's a new day. New life for me, woo, and I'm feeling good. Fish in the sea, you know how I feel. River running free, you know how I feel. Blossom of the tree, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good. Dragonfly out in the sun, you know what I mean, don't you know? Butterflies all having fun, you know what I mean. Sleep in peace when day is done, that's what I mean. And this old world is a new world and a bold world for me. It's a new life for me, and I'm feeling